When we mention Honda and its golden era in the motorcycle world, most of us immediately think of names like the CB350, CB450, or especially the CB750, the bikes that changed the entire game in the 1960s and 1970s. For Americans, that was the time when Honda truly became Honda. But what about the chapter that came before? A chapter that's been forgotten, or perhaps deliberately left out. The truth is, before Honda conquered the world with powerful and reliable engines, the foundation had already been quietly laid. Not with the flashy CBs, but with a humble and rarely mentioned line of motorcycles, the Dream models. These bikes weren't racing legends, nor were they style icons, but they were the birthplace of all of Honda's core technologies: overhead cam engines, electric start, oil-tight construction, and most importantly, the courage to do what no one else dared to try. Today, we're retracing the footsteps of those forgotten dreams to see that without them, there never would have been a Honda rising to global greatness, born from the ashes of war. After World War II, Japan was in ruins, its cities bombed out, its infrastructure shattered, and its transportation system in total chaos. Trains were crammed beyond capacity, buses overflowed, and for the everyday worker trying to get to their job or just get around, it was a nightmare. That's where motorcycles came in, not the kind that roared down highways. These were tiny, economical machines, often nothing more than bicycles with motors strapped to the frame. They were cheap, easy to fix, and they gave people something priceless: independence. In the late 1940s and early 50s, over 200 small manufacturers sprang up across Japan, all racing to meet this desperate demand. Some built scooters, others built mopeds. A few tried their hand at full-sized bikes. Most didn't last, but three names would survive the storm: Honda, Yamaha, Suzuki. Among them, Honda stood out, not because it had more money or better connections, but because it had a different philosophy. From the very beginning, Soichiro Honda wasn't just building motorcycles, he was building something to last, something reliable, something people could count on. While others rushed products to market, Honda tested, refined, and improved. He wasn't interested in making the cheapest bike. He wanted to make the best one. And that spirit, to build it right, even if it takes longer, would become the soul of the company. It all started here, in the ashes of a broken nation, with a small group of dreamers and machines barely strong enough to climb a hill. But what they lacked in power, they made up for in heart. And that made all the difference. The first four-stroke dream. Soichiro Honda never liked two strokes. They were noisy, smoky, unreliable, and to him, they just felt lazy. He believed the future belonged to the four-stroke engine, smoother, cleaner, longer lasting. But in post-war Japan, that was a bold stance. Two strokes were cheaper, easier to build, and already everywhere. Most companies wouldn't dare risk the time or money. Honda did. In the early 1950s, he introduced the Dream Type E, Honda's very first four-stroke motorcycle. It wasn't flashy, it wasn't powerful, but it was different. And that was the whole point. The Dream Type E used an overhead valve engine, a far more sophisticated design than what most of his competitors were using at the time. But this wasn't about bragging rights. It was about proving that better engineering meant better machines. To test it, Honda put the Dream through one of the most brutal challenges imaginable: a ride across the Hakone Pass during a torrential downpour. Steep climbs, slippery roads, pouring rain, and the bike didn't flinch. It made it all the way. And with that, Honda proved his point. This wasn't just a motorcycle, it was a statement, a message to the industry, and maybe even to the world. We're not here to copy, we're here to lead. Honda could have taken the easy road, but he didn't. He chose the harder path, the more expensive one, the one no one else was willing to take. Because sometimes, the only way to build something truly great is to start with a dream. Copying to surpass. Lessons from Europe. In 1954, Soichiro Honda packed his bags and flew to Europe. Officially, it was a business trip to scout for equipment and tooling. But truthfully, it was much more than that. Honda wanted to see the heart of the motorcycle world, to walk through the factories, hear the engines, smell the oil. He wanted to learn how the greats did it, and then figure out how to do it better. What he saw left a deep impression. German manufacturers like NSU, Horex, and Zundap stood head and shoulders above the rest. Their engineering was precise, their craftsmanship was meticulous, and their designs were years ahead of what Japan had at the time. Honda took notes, took photos, took parts. He even stuffed components into his suitcase to study back home. And then, he started copying. The early Dream models borrowed heavily from European designs. The headlight looked like a Triumph Thunderbird. The engine resembled a Horex single. The carburetor, a near clone of a Mal. But here's the key. Honda didn't just copy, he improved. He took the best ideas from Europe and made them lighter, more reliable, easier to maintain. He studied greatness, not to imitate it, but to surpass it. Other Japanese brands copied because they had nothing else. Honda copied because he had a vision, and by learning from the masters, he laid the foundation to one day become one himself. Sometimes, greatness doesn't start with a blank page. It starts with a blueprint and the courage to rewrite it. Dream, Honda's testing ground. The early Dream models weren't fast, they weren't sleek, and they sure didn't win any beauty contests. But that wasn't the point. Models like the SA, SB, ME, and MF were never built to impress buyers on showroom floors. They were built to test the future, to push boundaries, to ask the question, what could a motorcycle become if nothing was off limits? Take the engine, for example. Honda gave these bikes something rare for the time, an overhead camshaft OHC. Back then, that was racing-level technology, almost unheard of on small production bikes. They also featured something even fewer riders had ever seen: electric start. While British bikes still needed a firm kick, the Dream let you fire it up with the push of a button. And the innovations didn't stop there. Honda designed the engines with horizontally split crankcases, making them far more oil-tight than the leaky British twins of the day. The lubrication system used a low-pressure pump, aided by oversized ball bearings, reducing friction while keeping maintenance low. Every piece of these machines was built with one thing in mind: learn fast, fail faster, improve constantly. The Dream series was never about mass production or big sales. It was Honda's sandbox, their workshop, their lab, a place where ideas were tested, technology evolved, and lessons were learned the hard way. Because before you can lead the industry, you need a place to try, to stumble, and to get it right. For Honda, that place was the Dream, Superhawk, when failure became a lesson. For all its technical brilliance, the Dream had one fatal flaw. It was ugly. The bulky fenders, oversized headlight, and awkward proportions made it look more like a delivery bike than a street machine. Riders didn't want to be seen on it. It didn't matter how advanced it was under the hood. Motorcycles still had to stir the soul. Honda got the message. If performance alone wasn't enough, The bike had to look the part. And that's when they introduced a game changer, the Superhawk CB77. This wasn't just an upgrade, it was a rebirth. Gone were the bloated fenders and clunky lights. In came a sleek, sporty silhouette, flat handlebars, a streamlined headlamp, and clean lines that finally gave Honda the curb appeal it had been missing. But it didn't just look fast, it was fast. The Superhawk packed a 305 cubic centimeter double overhead cam twin, redlining at 9,500 RPM and capable, under the right hands, of spinning up to 12,000. It could hit 105 miles per hour, outpacing even the British Triumph 500, despite being smaller and lighter. And suddenly, riders took notice. The Superhawk proved that Honda could do both, engineer with precision and design with passion. It was their first true sport bike. And more than that, it was a declaration. Honda wasn't just trying to catch up anymore, they were ready to lead. The CB line, when Honda became a dragon. The Dream gave Honda its engineering soul. The Superhawk gave it style. But it was the CB line that gave Honda the crown. Built on everything Honda had learned, from the modest Dreams to the bold Superhawk, the CB series marked a turning point. It wasn't just one bike, it was a dynasty. From the CB 350 to the CB 450, CB 500, and beyond, these machines were smart, fast, dependable, and sold all over the world. Each new model refined the last, gaining power, polish, and presence. Riders didn't just want them, they trusted them. Then came 1969, and with it, the bike that changed everything, the CB 750. 4 cylinders, overhead camshaft, disc brake up front, a top speed around 125 miles per hour. And most important, it was mass-produced. The first true superbike, built not just for racers, but for everyday riders. It was sleek, affordable, and reliable, and it looked every bit as fierce as it performed. But underneath it all was Dream DNA. Every lesson from the early days was baked into this machine. The OHC engine, the oil-tight build, the smooth delivery, the electric start. But now, it came wrapped in a design that could stand toe-to-toe with the best of Europe and win. Honda didn't just catch up to the British, they blew right past them. And from that moment forward, the rest of the world wasn't asking what Honda was copying anymore. They were trying to keep up. Honda's founding philosophy: slow, steady, unstoppable. Honda didn't start with a bang. There was no flashy launch, no big-budget marketing blitz, no overnight sensation. They started small, built slow, and every step forward was earned with grit, sweat, and a relentless belief that doing it right was more important than doing it fast. While others chased headlines, Honda chased reliability. They didn't dump money into advertisements. They invested it into engineering, into testing, into learning. Soichiro Honda understood something that many of his competitors didn't. To build something great, you have to be willing to fail. You have to tinker. You have to break things. And you have to keep going, even when the world's not watching. Companies like Norton, Triumph, and Velocette, the ones he once looked up to, chose not to change. They stuck to what they knew and faded away. But Honda, from the fragile Dreams of the 1950s to the fire-breathing CBs of the 70s, they didn't just survive, they rewrote the rules. They built their legacy one bolt at a time. Not by cutting corners, but by earning trust, mile after mile, year after year. Because sometimes, the loudest revolution doesn't roar. It hums, quiet, smooth, and unstoppable, just like a Honda. Not every motorcycle that made history had to be beautiful, fast, or famous. Some, like Honda's very first dream models, just needed to show up at the right moment, with the right mindset, and the guts to challenge the times. They didn't bask in the spotlight, but they planted the seeds for everything that followed. From the Super Hawk to the CB 750, from one cautious step to a global empire. Soichiro Honda once dreamed of building a complete motorcycle, not just something that ran, but something reliable, easy to ride, packed with innovation, and built around the rider's real-world needs. From the humble dream to the mighty CB, he brought that vision to life, one deliberate step at a time. How about you? Have you ever seen, or maybe even owned, a vintage Honda dream? Which model do you believe truly laid the foundation for Honda's rise? Share your thoughts in the comments below, because your stories help bring these forgotten machines back to life. If you enjoyed this journey, don't forget to hit like to support the channel, and be sure to subscribe, because there are still so many lost chapters in motorcycle history waiting to be told, where the past isn't just remembered, it's felt. See you in the next video. Ride safe.